It is the most wonderful time of the year for college basketball bettors like us. I'm your host, Greg Waddell. That is the great Doug Kezirian. Troy Macker will be here shortly, and the NCAA tournament is upon us. Here on the 10 on the Bet Rivers Sports Network, we will go through every single first round game for the Big Ten teams that we know and love. We will give you our thoughts on each against the spread, totals, all of it. Any way to bet these games. We'll give you our initial instincts. But first, Doug, let's start with some futures discussion here. We've got a couple questions for you prompt wise, but also curious if there's any sort of Final Four long shot bets or anything you're placing pre-tournament beyond the initial first round games. I guess I'll start with this though. What is your boldest Big Ten prediction for the NCAA tournament?
Oh, that's a good question. So I haven't quite come to the conclusion whether I guess my boldest is Ohio State may be able to go the deepest of any Big Ten team. And a lot of that is matchup and bracket driven. I just not thrilled with Jake Diebler because the weekend turnaround, right? So whoever plays Thursday or Friday, that quick, less than 48-hour turnaround sometimes is where coaching really matters, right? When you have these experienced coaches, Izzo was always great at that. He went from, we know about his Final Fours, right? Well, a large part of that is, going from the Sweet 16 to the Elite Eight. He's out coaching his opponent in that situation. I just think the bracket really unfolds great for Buckeyes, but I wonder if their kind of DNA is better for familiar opponents like the Big Ten tournament and stuff like that. I just really think the makeup of this team with Thornton leading the way is really what you want in a tournament, and I like how the bracket unfolds. But my concern here is that it's just like I said, Diebler, and then other factors as well. There's with a lot of the other Big Ten teams, like the top of the conference, there's a but like with Whiskey. There's certainly but with the way the bracket unfolded, I don't like their second round matchup, even if they get past High Point. Michigan, I have tons of questions given how everything went in Chicago in the Big Ten tournament, and same with Purdue. Even though they thrived, I just have underlying concerns there. I think I had a feeling they're going to be overseeded, although they're not necessarily overseeded after winning the Big Ten tournament. So there's not flies in the ointment, but there's issues with all the top teams. And then, of course, there's always going to be issues with the long shots.
There are years as someone who has, lived in this conference ecosphere for my entire life. I'm 32 years old. There are years where I've been very high on the Big Ten team's chances in March, only to see the draw and want no part of it. Then there have been some years where I'm not so high on these teams, and then I see the draw and I love it. And I think there's multiple runs that could be made. I think this was a particularly strong year for the Big Ten. I mean, the questions with Michigan are certainly there following what we saw this week and post LJ Cason injury, 0-5 against the spread. But if they can rediscover their form, they have looked like an all-timer team. I think Purdue finally showed some of the stuff we wanted to see from the preseason number one. And then I think at various other points this year, we've seen four other teams that are possibly Final Four good, depending on draw. And you nailed the Wisconsin draw here. I think they got just a terrible path. If you wanted to believe in Wisconsin to win four straight, good luck with what they have in front of them here. But I think I look at teams like Michigan State, Illinois, Purdue, even Michigan, that are looking at their path, at least through the first two, maybe three rounds, thinking this is wide open for us and we can get hot. So if I had to, maybe give my boldest prediction here, I think I've got a few. My first run at this has two Big Ten teams in the Final Four. And I've got a sleeper pick I'll save for later in the show that I don't think anyone's going to pick as far as I am coming into this tournament. Let me ask you this, Doug. Is there a team that is seeded outside the top four seeds in this league that you think could make a deep run in this tournament?
Yeah, I think it's the Buckeyes. I like their first matchup, and this Duke team's vulnerable. I think they played great in the ACC tournament, given the injuries and everything else. But I think there's a weakness there. I think when you have a guy like Thornton with the point guard, I mean, that to me is such a key, valuable thing in this conference. And last year, let's not forget, one seeds made the Final Four for just the second time ever. All four one seeds, and that's been the narrative this college basketball season in terms of there's a drop off right after the top five teams. But I think UConn's got issues. As much as I love Danny Hurley, and he's covered 14 straight games in the tournament. Remember, he's also been an underdog and not just a favorite when they won back-to-back titles, covering all 6 games each run. I think there's issues here. I really do. And so when you see that in a bracket and see the chalk that could be vulnerable, all it takes is one bad stretch for 10 minutes or so, right? We saw that with Michigan against Wisconsin, right? They were up double digits, live lines like 12 and a half. And then all of a sudden they're trailing because one guy gets hot. Now, obviously, they hit a big 3 at basically the gun and they advance. But what if that doesn't happen? We go to OT. So we forget how this can sort of get away from you. Last year, as great as Florida was, UConn was a favorite on the live line during that tournament, right? And they came back late. Frankly, Florida was down a bunch of games down before they cut down the net. So I just think some of these teams can make a run if you like the draw. It all has to come down to the draw. Like, obviously, I love Wisconsin, and I'd be picking them, but the draw is terrible for them. It truly is terrible. It's the worst matchup, getting Arkansas in the second round. That's if they get past High Point. I do think Illinois has a very, very favorable run. I think that's probably the team that I think is going to go deepest in the Big Ten, but that's not outside the top 4.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. I agree with Illinois. Fran McCaffrey, then potentially Hubert Davis without his best player. That should be a little boost to get Brad Underwood to his second weekend appearance at Illinois. I'll give you 2. One is outside the top 4 seeds. One is within it. I'm playing the same game you are here, Doug. I like how this shook out for UCLA. Now, I wish you could give me some confirmation they're fully healthy. Obviously, they make a semifinal appearance in the Big Ten tournament. Then Donovan Dent goes down, and that was all she wrote. I would point out, even without Dent and Bilodeau, they did take Purdue to the wire. That was a 1-possession game late, and Trent Perry looked amazing in that game, running the show, finished with 9 assists. I just love this UCLA team since they've decided on small ball. Mick Cronin has really gone away from his very stubborn approach throughout the entire tenure of his career and leaned into what's good for this roster, and it's worked. And I think they have a great point guard in Dent that, if healthy, surrounded by 40% shooters, is a team that can make a run. I loved how they looked against Michigan State, even though Bilodeau went down early in that game. And I won't be surprised at all if we see UCLA versus Michigan State in the Sweet 16. I like UCLA to beat UConn in the second round if they can get there. And then here's the one that I'm going bold on here, boys. I have Nebraska making a run to the Elite 8 in this tournament. And it sounds crazy. A lot of people like Troy over them early. They have not played their best basketball. But I can't shake a potential matchup with Florida and what that looks like schematically. I've been so strong to you guys all year that matchups matter with the way this Nebraska defense works. If they can key in on willing shooters that don't make threes, they have a lot of success. And that's exactly what Florida's problem is this year. Xavier Lee and Boogie Fland are high volume 3-point takers that are both shooting 28% on the season. And I think the size is going to be a problem. They'll get beat up on the boards for sure. But it's the same way they beat Illinois in that first matchup in Champaign. If they can just survive, if they can swarm with all these unorthodox triple teams on every post touch, they can force kickouts to shooters that can't make. I would love them in that matchup. And it sounds crazy given their form in these last 4 weeks, but they're one of those teams. I really like how the draw shook out for them. All right, we're going to get into these games. We will go through every single first-round game outside of Michigan. I do want to note this. Michigan is waiting to see which 16 seed they will play. So no analysis from us there, but we'll go through every other game in the first round, beginning with the Ohio State Buckeyes. Doug has already said he likes their draw, so I think I know where he's headed. -2.5 against TCU, a total at 146.5. What do you like?
So, again, the tournament has a different sort of just makeup, right? We talked about this last week, how the conference championships are different in and of itself. We just got to remember there's an ebb and flow to a season, and then there's an ebb and flow to a conference tournament, and then there's ebb and flow to the NCAA tournament. It just is what it is, right? So let's think about this. You have a neutral site, you have travel, you have different, and then there's just the unknown, right? At these sites, this won't happen in this matchup, but a lot of times you get these double-digit underdogs versus this, and then the crowd that's there for waiting for their team to play later in the day gets excited and rallies around the underdog. this is all part of it. And then just the unknown of March Madness, right? It's different. You don't know how certain kids or players are going to react and all of that. So that's just something to keep in the mind, or your back of your mind. Keep in mind. I like the Buckeyes here. I don't think this TCU team's great. Now their ceiling is really high, maybe even higher than the Buckeyes. But I think it's interesting because both teams sort of have similar like vibes, right? TCU played Kansas really tight at the Fog, and Ohio State can play the big boys in the Big Ten really well. But I think that all comes down to familiarity and things like that. I I I like the Buckeyes here. I just think Thornton's a guy I want to go to battle with. He's poised, four-time captain, right? It's the first time that's ever happened in the program. He's just that dude you want with the ball in his hands. Now, TCU is obviously good. Would I be shocked if they won outright? Of course not. But I think in this matchup, I'm going to go to war with Ohio State. Point guards are key to me. There's never a blanket rule with anything, but typically you want point guard play. They understand the magnitude of each possession. They don't get sloppy. Everything is just heightened in the NCAA tournament, and he's got poise beyond, wise beyond his years. So that's why I want to go to battle with the Buckeyes.
Yeah, I'm also on Ohio State here, -2.5. I played it very quickly as soon as lines came out. I just think personnel-wise, it's a very good matchup for Ohio State's best players. When I think what is the Buckeye defense vulnerable to, an offense rated 81st in adjusted offensive efficiency doesn't scare me. I mean, you really are vulnerable to potent scorers. TCU doesn't have a ton of those. They kind of want to brutalize you. And David Punch is a great player on the wing, but I think Devin Royal can handle that matchup with how physical he is as a big jumbo-sized wing. And then TCU's defense has been stellar this year. It's very good. They force a lot of turnovers, but the way that they're going to try and pose problems for Bruce Thornton just doesn't scare me. I think Brock Harding kind of flying around and taking some gambles in passing lanes is not going to pose too much of a threat to the way Thornton has been playing for the last month. So give me the Buckeyes. Like you, I won't be stunned if we are wrong. TCU is a team I have a lot of respect for, but matchup-wise, the X's and O's and the personnel make sense to favor Ohio State here. Let's go to game 2 on the list. It is the Nebraska Cornhuskers against Troy. This is a popular upset pick from circles that I am in on the national media side of things. You already heard my 2 cents. I think the Cornhuskers are making a run through this tournament. Does that mean I'm touching 13.5 here? Not sure on that one. Doug, any thoughts?
Yeah, I lean to the dog with the points here. I don't know if I like Nebraska as well to advance. I think they're really underrated because they've sort of faded down the stretch. Now, why did they fade? Well, there's familiarity with opponent and certain schedule. Sometimes you get the wrong teams at the wrong time of year, which is why people thought the Huskers were fool's gold to start the Big Ten season, right? They had the big win over Whiskey at home, and then they beat Michigan State as well. And then they go to Minnesota, have the big second half, and I thought they played great against Michigan, even in a loss. And then the sort of the other things happen, like they lose to Illinois, and then sort of hit a wall in LA, and they lose that game, the second game at UCLA. But we learned the Bruins are undefeated at home in regulation. I think 17-1 at home overall, if I'm not mistaken. But either way, I think this Nebraska team's good. I just think 13.5 gets to that really tricky number where I'm just not in a rush to lay it. Now, with that being said, the Huskers bomb the 3 and 5-point lead, can get to 14 really easily. And then all of a sudden you're sweating out a backdoor cover when you looked good down 5 if you grab the points. So I'm not in a rush to bet the Trojans here, but that's how I would play it. But I do think Nebraska advances.
Yeah, I don't have a solo play for this game at all, but as I mentioned, I like Nebraska in this tournament in general. I agree with you. They're a bit undervalued because of a limp to the finish line, I would say. Now, their offense has been the issue. Their defense has largely been fine to me. It's just this offense went from prolific early in the season to just okay, just good in the final month. I do think familiarity, a lot of Big Ten second rematch type games where once you see the Nebraska defense for 40 minutes, you kind of get a better feel for what you're playing against. It's hard to replicate. It's hard to simulate. It's hard to prep for. And I think a Troy team, they just check a lot of the boxes to me that don't scare me if I'm Nebraska. They shoot a lot of threes, but they're a terrible shooting team. They make 33% of them. That's exactly what Nebraska wants. Troy's 2-point defense is not good. It's outside the top 190 in the country. Nebraska will be able to get some easy shots at the rim with the way they run that half-court offense. And Troy's not a great rebounding team either. I don't think they're going to beat up Nebraska there in an area they've been vulnerable against some of the best. So I think anyone picking Troy outright in this game is really just looking to fade Nebraska to me. I don't really understand the math on why it's a great matchup for Troy. I'm not looking to fade Nebraska. I'm also not looking to back them at 13.5. It's a stay away in the pregame for me. Let's go to the Wisconsin Badgers next in a 5-12 matchup that I think I share the same thoughts you have here, Doug. This is not what I was looking for. I am a Wisconsin believer. I wanted to pick them deep into this tournament. I think they can win this game without too much struggle, but it's a testy one. And then I'm already looking ahead to that potential round of 32 path and beyond. Arkansas, possibly Arizona if they get to a Sweet 16. There's just not a lot of room for belief for a deep run in this tournament for me, given where they are slotted in the bracket. They're 9.5-point favorites against High Point here. What do you like?
Yeah, I'm taking the points here. Wisconsin's a feast or famine team. The variance has been discussed with this Badgers squad, and I think it's applicable. It's not like just a cliche. Like, this team can beat anyone, and they can almost lose to anyone, and that's a concern in the tournament with this obviously single game elimination as opposed to like the NBA playoffs. So I'm with these types of teams. If you want to fill out a bracket with that kind of risk, fine. That's usually a team where you want to bet futures and just have one ticket and not necessarily your whole bracket relying on a team to get hot and things like that. I worry about Wisconsin. Honestly, I don't think they're getting past the first weekend. Unfortunately, I think the draw is just really bad. I think Arkansas should definitely be there. Hawaii's defense is interesting, but Arkansas is going to be really impressive. And then Cal on a quick turnaround. I like Greg Gard a lot. I think he's obviously knows what he's doing, but there's been a couple of decisions during the Big Ten tournament. I was like questioning some of the decision making with out of timeouts and stuff like that. Either way, I thought he did a great job finding the hot hand against Michigan. Really, really impressive job. So I don't know what to do, but I would lean to taking the points here, even though I think the Badgers' upside is Final Four.
Yeah, that's exactly how I sort of survey the landscape here as well. I'm going to be on the points with High Point plus 9.5. I don't feel good about it because I have so much respect for what Nick Boyd and John Blackwell have done. They are a backcourt that dreams are made of in March, but I don't see the long-term vision here too. And one thing I would point out, psychologically handicapping a little bit here, I do think draw matters with just the way teams show up to their first NCAA tournament game. I think if you have a little bit of self-belief of like, man, we love where we're at, we can win 3-4 straight games. Sometimes I just think that matters. And I think they know what they've drawn into here. I'm not expecting them to run away from the moment or anything, but schematically, High Point poses a lot of problems for Wisconsin. High Point is the 5th best turnover forcing defense in college basketball. Wisconsin's greatest strength is an offense. Really is taking care of the basketball. That's going to be put to the test against a High Point defense that is elite there. On the other side, Wisconsin never forces turnovers. High Point never turns it over. They're probably going to win the possession battle here. The two areas that High Point is most vulnerable in, offensive rebounds allowed. Wisconsin doesn't do that. And then they foul a lot defensively. Wisconsin doesn't get to the free throw line a lot offensively. So, look, it might come down to 3-point making. Like you said, high variance in Wisconsin games. That's not something I would want to lay 9.5 with here in the opening round. I wouldn't call High Point a live dog to win outright. I have too much respect for Nick Boyd, but at 9.5, it's a number I'm comfortable taking the underdog in. Let's go next to Michigan State as a 3 seed against North Dakota State here. Spartans minus 16.5, total 143.5. What do you think?
I really like the underdog here. This is my best bet so far. I with Sparty, like, they're gonna just be head scratching and frustrating. I really believe in that. And also, let's just say they dominate. Once you got to get ready for the next game, and I think you're going to be able to. I think you're going to be able to backdoor cover this as guys get pulled. Now, obviously, a point spread in the 20s is better because that's when you really get, with 3 minutes to go, the guys get pulled, and maybe with 18-point lead, they don't get pulled until 2 minutes to go. But I do think this North Dakota State's upside is making a run and kind of hang around. They weren't great. They weren't like this undefeated team in the Summit or anything like that. But I think their upside's right there, and I just don't like this Michigan State team a bunch. Um, I thought they got manhandled by UCLA in a lot of ways. I think one team wanted to be there, one didn't. And I don't know if I love the leadership all season with this Michigan State team. Now, I'm not questioning Izzo. What I'm saying is Izzo had to say certain things publicly about fears and do all the things. Now, look, he's been around forever. So he knows which buttons to push, and you always adjust to your team. You don't make the team adjust to you. And obviously, Tom Izzo's a Hall of Famer who knows that. I just think you look at the tempo right here. I think this is going to be a relatively slower game, and I think getting all those points is something that really interests me. What if fears doesn't come to play, so to speak? And this is a team that can hang around single digits for most of the game. That's why I'm rolling with the Bison.
I don't hate it. I agree with your sentiment in the big picture on Michigan State in a strong way. If there was one team that is one of these top 4 seeds in this tournament from the Big Ten Conference that I was looking to fade, depending on draw, it probably was the Michigan State Spartans. Problem for me, I think they got a great draw.
Yeah.
Just flat out. I think they're paired with the weakest 2 seed in UConn. I think, a third game against Mick Cronin shouldn't scare them if UCLA pulls the upset as I expect. And this North Dakota State team, I think they can be scrappy, certainly, but we are talking here about a Summit League team that is built largely around being a dominant rebounding team. I've never seen something that scares me less against Tom Izzo teams than a Summit League team that's built on winning the rebounding battle. That's just a physicality awakening. Anytime we see those type of games in March, those are the teams that Michigan State doesn't struggle with. They've got to make shots, and they're a decent shooting team. Maybe they get hot from 3. But for me, even though it is a rather large number, I really want no part of it, because I think as soon as you kind of lift the curtain on the rebounding war that they normally win, I wonder how that affects them early on in this game. So share your big picture thoughts, Doug. For this one, I'll stay away. Let's welcome Troy Macker into the show for the first time, though. Troy, we are talking Michigan State, North Dakota State. What can you add for us?
Yeah, people are really high on the 13 and 14 seeds to cover or pick up wins in the first round. And surprisingly enough, this is not one of them. Right now, Michigan State is the strongest spread play of all first round plays by the splits on the spread. Right now, 81% of the tickets are on Sparty to cover 16.5. And that number does seem a little bit high to me. But again, to your point, this is not a North Dakota State team that is going to shoot lights out. I do have some concerns about Michigan State's ability to shoot the ball, but if there's any sort of transitions or turnovers, that is where Michigan State excels. It's not one of these cases where if the game slows down, Michigan State doesn't have chances to get back in it. I think they do because of their transition game. But the public is very strongly on Michigan State here. There are a lot of decent and good 13, 14, even some 12 seeds that can pull off upsets. But, I usually want to lean the way of the dog here. But I think that it's going to be a mismatch between a coach who knows how to get it done and a team that, while very good, hasn't had a world-class non-conference schedule. And again, they want to bully you, and that's very hard to do against a blue-collar team like Tom Izzo.
All right. Thank you, Troy, for the added insights. We've got one final game on Thursday to discuss. It's the Illinois Fighting Illini against an old friend, Fran McCaffrey, now coaching the Penn Quakers, his alma mater, TJ Power, with one of the most impressive individual performances in conference tournament week to get Penn to this point. It's been a pretty fantastic story as Fran was kind of ran out of Iowa City to immediately take his alma mater to the NCAA tournament. But I don't know if we should expect this to go as past Fran McCaffrey Illinois games have gone. We'll see. Huge number here. The Illini minus 24.5. Pretty large total here, too, 149.5. What do you think, Doug?
Yeah, I handicapped the Ivy League quite a bit, so I'm familiar with these teams. Yale blew it. Yale up 6 in the final seconds. Somehow Jones calls a timeout to set up his defense, and it was the worst defense you've ever seen. And he did it on back-to-back possessions, and that forced overtime. I really don't understand what was going on. With that being said, I just wanted to give that backstory because it's not like Penn is one of these previous Ivy teams that were clearly the best and then make a run in the Sweet 16. I don't think the Quakers meet that profile. Yes, they have a stud who's a former Duke and Virginia player who transferred, right? Like he's the guy who goes for 40 bomb. And I just think Illinois has too much size down low. I actually like the under. I think McCaffrey knows how, obviously knows the Big Ten. I think he's going to try to slow this down. And he's got a couple studs. He's got a really athletic guard. And I think he's going to try to, just get the ball to TJ and go from there. I just think it's too many points. I don't think Penn's going to be dumb enough to try to run with the Illini, even though the Illini don't want to run. I think he's going to, concoct something and try to just muck it up and hang around, hope the Illini go cold, something like that. I thought this number would be like 15. I really did. Again, Penn's not this dominant Ivy League team, which we've been sort of chic picks in years past that can make a run. I think this is the old school Ivy League where they're just, they prevailed and they're going to get boat raced. I just think the number's too high.
I have sort of the same gut feel that I think you maybe spoke to with Michigan State a little bit. That's where I'm feeling with the Illini right now. Something smells fishy. I was looking back at their last month of the season because they lost 4 overtime games, right? How different do we feel about this team if instead of being 0-4 in overtime, they're 2-2 or something? Probably a lot different. But at the same time, guys, they are 1-5 against NCAA tournament teams since February 1st. That's not a good mark for the number 1 KenPom offense in history coming into February. And they fall in the second nationally. They still can outscore you, but Wagler has not been the guy he was that was historically efficient. He's just simply been good. And I think they have a leadership problem. I mean, you hear their vocal leader, role player Jake Davis, after the Wisconsin game say, well, we would beat that team 7 of 10 times. You're 0-2 against them this year. There's a little bit of just this arrogance to this team that we can just outscore you. And that I don't like the toughness inside. Now, it's not going to matter against Penn, who, to your point, Doug, is not the best team in the Ivy League. I think their bigs will be fine. I think they'll win the game. But I almost think this is an insulting line at 24.5. A Fran McCaffrey-led team that knows Brad Underwood very well. I think he's going to have his team ready. I think TJ Power bombing threes over a very passive Illinois defense is honestly a pretty good formula for Penn to hang around. And we'll see. This is still Brad Underwood in March. Let me remind you, he hasn't had the greatest track record there. Back to Troy for his thoughts on Penn, Illinois. Troy, what can you add?
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree that 24.5 is way too many points. The thing I do love about Penn is I've been trying to find trends in the Big Ten all year, and a lot of teams end up in and around the Mendoza line when it comes to against the spread and over-unders. Well, not Penn. Certainly the gap in talent in the Ivy League is wildly different than the Big Ten, but 20-8 against the spread and 7-21, 7 times they've hit the over. So this is an unders team where Illinois is an unders team, but so is Penn. But they're 28 against the spread. They're an efficient defense. I think opponents are shooting 31% from behind the arc. They're shooting 67% from free throw line. Those are good numbers to have on your defensive wall going up against a team that should beat you off the court. And in addition to that, you obviously have a coach who is familiar with the opposition. I do think Illinois wins the game. But to your point, Underwood's success in March should be noted. Illinois' how they haven't been able to really finish it off should be noted. Did they peak too early? That should be noted as well. And the fact that it's 24.5 points, that seems too much. KenPom has it as 21. I would have expected 18.5, something like that. I lean to the under here as well. 6 of Illinois' last 9 games have actually gone over, but Penn, 13 of their last 14, the Ivy League championship game that went into overtime is the only one of their last 14 that has gone over. Certainly, I anticipate Illinois dictating this game, but I still think this is going to be a sluggish game that potentially neither team is very great at hitting their shots in this one, even though they're both very good three-point shooting teams. But I see Illinois winning this game, but I do not see them winning by 25 points. Right now, 65% of the money is on Illinois to cover, but 74% of the tickets are on the Quakers to cover. We're seeing a lot of tickets back the underdogs. Certainly it's early, but I think this is a matchup where, the familiarity and just the pace of play will help the underdog keep it relatively close based off just a massive line. One of the 2 or 3 biggest lines in the first round thus far.
All right, some alignment from the crew on that one. Thank you, Troy. Let's go to the Friday games next. There are 3 more that we will get to here, beginning with an 8-9 matchup between the Iowa Hawkeyes and the Clemson Tigers. Ben McCollum has a pretty historically special postseason success rate, going all the way back to his days at the non-Division I level. We'll see if that translates now that he is into the Big Ten. Hawkeyes favored as the 9 seed over the 8 seed by 2.5 points. Total here is just 130.5. What do you think, Doug?
I really like Iowa here. I think Clemson stinks. I think they're inept offensively in a lot of ways. The ACC had a really weird schedule. So some teams have like a little bit of an inflated records. Like Virginia, I like at times, but they also are like the Patriots of the ACC, like their schedule. They didn't really play anyone, things like that. But they're good. Don't get me wrong. They're good. And obviously, there's aspects of them I really like. With this Clemson team, I think they're kind of a phony. We saw who they were when they had that 4-game losing streak. I think Iowa's going to totally just outsmart them and be better prepared. You mentioned McCollum. I love this Iowa matchup. I didn't think the Hawkeyes were that good in the tournament, Big Ten tournament, because I think there's just better, quality of competition, opponents, coaching. But I think this will be a slow game, as we see with the tempo here. I think it's going to be a lower scoring game than you think, but Iowa can get hot. Now, they lost the game where they shot 50% from the field, but I think the Buckeyes just went on that run where they were up like 15-20. But Hawkeyes came back. Like, they can bomb. Not like peak, but this is an 8-9 game where I think Iowa kind of wire to wire.
Yeah, as a general rule of thumb for me with this tournament, I think when you have these sort of middle of the pack seeded Big Ten teams against other power conference teams that are in a similar range, I think there's some value on the group from the Big Ten. I'm looking at teams like Ohio State, who we already mentioned, liking at a similar price here. I like Iowa a lot, -2.5 in this game. There's another we're going to get to in just a moment that I think qualifies, although the spread's dragged out a little more. But I just think these are teams that got beat up by the 4 or 5 teams that have been KenPom top 10 teams in this league all year long and are now a little bit underseeded. Quite frankly, Iowa is a 9 seed. I wouldn't have expected that a month ago. I would have thought maybe they're a 5 or 6 seed. So you're getting a good time, a good price to buy the dip here a little bit against a Clemson team that is not fully healthy right now. McCollum really has been great in postseason settings, especially when he has time to prepare. We'll see what happens to Iowa if they do get past this matchup. I'd love to handicap that game against Florida if the opportunity arrives. But for now, it's one of my favorite bets before tip-off of the first-round games. Iowa -2.5 will be on the card. Let's go to another Friday night game here, UCLA against UCF. Injury concerns, of course, hanging over this game after Donovan Dent exited the Big Ten tournament semifinal, and Bilodeau left 1 game earlier in UCLA's run in that tournament. But from what I have heard behind the scenes, they are expecting both to give it a go at minimum. Will they be 100%? We don't know, but at least some early indications that they're going to try. UCLA -5.5 here. If you want UCF money line, you can get them +190 at Bet Rivers. Totals 152.5, Doug.
Yeah, this is really frustrating. I like the Bruins so much, and I thought they'd be ready for a little bit of a run. I think they found their groove at the right time. Mick Cronin is an excellent coach. I know I've teased him, and so has a lot of other people, about just how they handle the road trips and all that stuff. And I think it's kind of funny that, they have to travel all the way to the East Coast here. But he knows what he's doing. He's an excellent coach. And I just, at full strength, I think UCLA could make a run here. We always see these 1 seeds get tested in the second round that after looking great in the first round. And the 2 seeds. And I think I agree with what you said earlier, Greg. I think this was UConn team's ripe for an upset. I just think the Huskies are like the Minnesota Timberwolves of the NBA. Like the NBA, like their upside is high, but they're just so inconsistent all season. I don't think you can flip a switch, and they're gonna get bit pretty early at some point. And I thought UCLA could be the team to do it. Now, give it a go doesn't instill a lot of confidence. There's no way I'm laying 5.5 here because I think they can lose the game. But I think Cronin will have his guys ready, and I thought he was very impressive coaching. I thought UCLA was resilient in the second half, being shorthanded, and they'll be prepared shorthanded. It's like a quarterback that gets hurt mid-game and they look terrible. And the next week you're like, oh, I'm definitely betting against them. Well, it's like, yeah, well, now they have a week of practice and they have a new game plan and they can sort of prepare for being shorthanded. So for UCLA to do that mid-game and have enough offense and make big shots, I was blown away. I thought they would kind of fade away because they just didn't have the horses, but they stuck around. They stuck around in that loss. I think they'll get it done here because I don't think much of UCF. They've been pretty inconsistent, although they had a couple nice wins here and there. I'm not laying the points though. I would side with the Knights plus the points if I had to.
All right, I have a confession, guys. I think I bought some UCLA stock early in the season, maybe secretly without telling you guys. I have a 125 to 1 UCLA Final Four ticket that I've been sitting on for a couple of weeks here, and I'm loving this draw for the Bruins, and I love this game for the Bruins. I'm going to be on UCLA minus 5.5 here. I think UCF, excuse me, a lot of UCs going on in this game. UCF limped to the finish line, and they got that dramatic victory over Cincy where they were down 10 with 2 minutes left and somehow stole that game. Outside of that, guys, they lost 3 straight games at the end of the regular season against teams that did not make the NCAA tournament. I mean, those are home losses to Oklahoma State and Baylor are terrible results for this team. They were hot early. They have not been hot at all late. I think this is kind of a dead in the water type UCF team that against the UCLA team, if at full strength, I would hammer this line. But even if they're not at full strength, I loved what I saw from Trent Perry in the Big Ten tournament. I thought Purdue played great this week, and UCLA hung around after Dent limped to the locker room with 30 minutes left in that game. And they've got shooters everywhere. Sky Clark is playing great basketball right now on both ends. I've been impressed with the resilience of this group. I think sometimes Mick Cronin can beat up teams that maybe break them, right? This group has responded to his antagonistic nature this year. And I'm going to be investing in the Bruins. I already did, but I'm sticking with them as the NCAA tournament gets here. Give me the Bruins minus 5.5. Troy, back to you here. What can you add on this game for us?
Yeah, UCLA to cover is actually the 4th strongest spread play by games spread money. 87% of the early money is on the Bruins to cover 5.5. And UCLA has covered in 5 of its last 6 games. UCF, like you mentioned, has come in losing 4 of its last 5. Certainly, they do have wins over Kansas, Texas Tech. They beat Texas A&M in the non-conference schedule, but they have really limped to the finish line. So the only concern I have is the health of UCLA, but I agree that this, if healthy or even remotely healthy, I think they're in far better position. And I also think, while they have been a little bit more of a high-paced team than normal, this is a styles makes fights. And, UCF is top 50 in offensive efficiency, top 75 in adjusted tempo, and UCLA is, bottom 250 in tempo. They're extremely efficient on defense. So it's really like, how do we see this fight playing out? And, certainly last year and the last couple of years, Mick Cronin led teams have had far more success in the first round in terms of getting big wins. They woodshedded a Utah State team that people were high on last year. I think they won by like 20, they scored 80 points. But my kind of muscle memory bank is on a lot of Mick Cronin teams that won first round games or lost first round games by 1 point at the buzzer in like 57, 59 games, 63, 64 games. This game to me at 152.5 seems like an underplay. 96% of the money and 84% of the tickets is on the under. Certainly it's early, but that is a staggering percentage for unders. 5 of UCF's last 8 games have gone under, and 5 of UCLA's last 7 games with a total of 150 or more have gone under. I do think UCLA wins, can't go near the points, but the total for me at 152.5, I'm playing the under that this is going to be a sluggish rock fight that is dictated by UCLA's defense.
I like the undershout as well, Troy, especially if there are injury concerns for Mick Cronin. You would think maybe he really wants to limit possessions in that opening round game. All right, one more on Friday here. It is the Big Ten tournament champion, Purdue Boilermakers. 25.5 is what this opened at. It is down to 24.5 against Queens University. Big total here at 163.5. Doug, do you like anything?
Doesn't this feel like the 116 matchup where they lost? Like, it kind of just like, what? Queens from New York? I would take the points here. I was really impressed with Purdue only having 2 turnovers against Michigan. I mean, I think that was your key right there. Braden Smith, obviously the head of the snake with the offense, and having that kind of veteran point guard play is so valuable. I'll pay to see it again, right? Like, this is a team that's been inconsistent. sort of plays down to their opponent. Maybe a first half here. I think we've talked about it throughout the course of the season where Purdue kind of plays with their food. Really, it's a first 10 minutes thing at times. There was a run there where they would be down in this kind of situation after 10 minutes. So in the tournament, you can have those fun bets, first to 5, first to 10, first to 20. Maybe you take Queens with the plus money and have some fun. I just don't love this Queens team. I don't think they fit the DNA of a really deep tournament, sort of long shot that can go far. I think the Boilermaker bigs, I thought they had really huge efforts down the stretch in the Big Ten tournament, and they just proved to be too much. Does that carry over? I don't want to say flat spot because it's still the big dance, but you're not exactly playing an elite program or elite team that you know really well, right? That's when you're an underdog and those points become so valuable when Purdue's catching 6.5 against the Wolverines or whatever. I think this is a different sort of game flow, and I think the game flow favors Queens here. And I did not know their mascot was the Royals.
Yeah, special. It is. It's very nice. Let me ask you this, Doug, just because we have had some big picture Purdue conversations on the show in the recent weeks. And obviously it's been a debate in general on if we are liking or not liking this team. You were a skeptic coming in on all things Purdue. Did the result of the Big Ten tournament week fundamentally change the way you view this team? Or was that more draw dependent, got hot at the right time?
A little bit of both. I thought they've played great, and I think you deserve credit. I don't want to die on a hill if Purdue can't flip the switch. I'm very surprised they did. Now, I think that's a different switch you flip to play those teams that are good and all that versus to cover 25 points.
Yeah,
it's just a different animal. I do think Miami could get them in the second round. I don't think much of this Missouri team, but if Missouri advanced, they have the athleticism and the size to play well. Mizzou is just a weird team. After that, I think it opens up for them, like where I think they can come out of the region. So I would not be shocked if Purdue goes Final Four. And if they do, it would sort of match what I thought coming into the season, right? With Braden Smith at the helm. And I always say this, teams are allowed to get better, right? I mean, the season started in October, November. So for us to be sitting here in mid-March and the team to be good, that happens, right? That's good coaching. Now, I think Painter can absolutely build a program. We know that. Just sometimes in game, he gets frustrating, but he figures out a way often. And that's why he's been there for so long. And I think, look, he didn't win the national championship, but he got the title game. I think that says a lot. So I think there's the Boilermakers could be ready for a run here. I do think the bracket could open up. Arizona's beatable. You have to play your best, but if you have enough size, it can make things happen. I think that could happen, but they could also be bounced in the second round, which is the beauty of the big dance.
The Michigan result in the championship game is the really noteworthy portion of this for me. I thought Purdue had the draw to get to the Big Ten championship game. I thought it was largely draw that explained why they looked so good until the championship game. And then they had a Michigan team that destroyed them in their own arena a month and a half ago that they just punked. I mean, they played Merez Johnson off the floor. Oscar Clough was sensational. He's been a different player this week than he was the entire conference stretch of the season. I think Painter did a couple things that matter too. If you're looking at Purdue in the big picture here, he's abandoned the Daniel Jacobson experiment. And early in the year, I think we all thought that was a key to Purdue's growth. He just didn't develop the way we expected. He's been a liability defensively for this team, not an asset. And Painter abandoned it. And I think it's the right move. And I give him credit for it. And if he's going to lean into trimming the rotation a little bit, I think this team's got a chance. I feel very similarly to this draw as I did about their Big Ten tournament draw, where it's like, oh, they're on the right little pocket of this. I don't see any great ball screen guards that are going to torch them. That's the one thing they're most vulnerable to until you get to the Elite Eight. And then you got to go through Arizona. But quite frankly, there's some teams that could pick off Arizona in the top half of this bracket, and maybe Purdue dodges a bullet there as well. Look, all this to say, I believe in Purdue in the big picture of this tournament. I actually do have them coming out of the region and in the Final Four. I do not have them covering against Queens. because if I know this Purdue team the way I think I know this Purdue team, they get cute with teams that they're not concerned about. I think you're going to see a lot of Painter bench minutes, keep his locker room happy. We don't want to win this game by 50. We just want to win this game. And it's a huge number. Queens' defense is terrible. That's the big problem. I'd be surprised if Purdue doesn't score 90 points in this game. But I think we've seen the Purdue defense take possessions off, play uninspired, let teams hang around at stretches of this season. I love them in the bigger moments of this tournament. I don't love them with a huge number in round one. All right. There we have it. That was a big one, but it's a big time of year, boys. You got to love it. Doug, give me your best bet for the NCAA tournament's first round.
I'm torn because I like Iowa, but Clemson looked inept against Duke because I think they were just tired legs. So, and I like Ohio State. So those are the two short favorites that I'm liking a lot. I like Penn plus the points, but I'm going to go North Dakota State here. Sparty's been disappointing at times this year, particularly on the road now. So they're not playing at someone's home arena. So that was a concern, but I think it's just a few too many points. So I'll take the Bison of North Dakota State here, plus the points is my best bet.
All right. I love it. I have a lot of strong plays here. There's a revolving door here I'm excited to bet, but I'll lock in Ben McCollum's Iowa Hawkeyes as my best bet for the first round. I do believe in track records in March really mattering. I think that's one of the strongest things you should look at. Do you have a coach who's good in single elimination spots where, unique prep goes into it? McCollum is one of the best in the business. That's why he has been such a riser in this industry. And I think he's going to sort of stamp his resume a little bit with a win in a fortunate draw over a Clemson team with injury concerns that should not have the answers. So Iowa for me, North Dakota State for Doug Kezirian. Troy, thank you so much for your insights as well. We appreciate it. To all of our viewers who have watched the show all year, thank you so much. Reminder, this is part of the Bet Rivers Sports Network, where you can also watch Sports Better's Paradise with Jimmy Ott every single week. We will have more coverage as the NCAA tournament progresses here for you at Bet Rivers. For Doug, for Troy, for our whole team behind the scenes, thank you. Enjoy the madness. We'll see you next time.